Discover the incredible truth. My brothers wanted to divide everything over Mom's dementia. What would you do? Sarah stood in her dimly lit classroom, the scent of chalk mingling with the faint aroma of her lunch, a leftover casserole still warm in her bag. Her students, once so full of potential, always bustling with laughter and questions, felt like distant echoes now. Teaching was the lifeline she clung to, a way to immerse herself in growth and connection. Yet as she prepared for another day, her mind drifted relentlessly to her mother. How can I keep nurturing these young minds when my own heart is breaking? She thought, glancing at the empty desk where her mother had once smiled at her. That smile was fading, replaced by blank stares and forgotten names. Each visit to the hospital eroded a little more of what made her mother, well, her mother. The hallways of her quaint hometown, once vibrant with dreams and laughter, now echoed with the sharpness of discord. Mark and Jake, the brothers she'd leaned on, now shrank in her eyes, their quarrels over the family home slicing through the bonds they once cherished. "What are we doing?" she whispered, her heart a mix of anguish and anger as she imagined her brothers locked in bitter disputes over property lines and possessions when their mother needed them most. The very essence of their family was disintegrating, and she felt powerless to stop it. Will they ever remember what truly matters? As she faced a growing void within her own family, Sarah unearthed her grandmother's hidden locket, a tarnished emblem of love and lineage. Holding it in her palm, she felt the weight of stories untold, memories suffocating beneath the dust of neglect. She could almost hear her grandmother's voice, admonishing the importance of family ties. It's not the things we leave behind that matters, but the love we share. But each passing moment without her mother seemed to push her brothers further into their selfish ambitions. Could that simple piece of jewelry bridge the chasm of resentment? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But as Sarah confronted Mark and Jake with the locket trembling in her grip, a palpable tension filled the air, sharp as new glass. Her heart raced as she questioned if they would only hear her desperate plea to reclaim their unity, or if her brothers were too entrenched in their resentments to care. Stirring up these emotions feels like trying to reel in a storm, she thought bitterly as she faced their unyielding glares. Each word she spoke felt like a delicate navigation through the minefield of grief and avarice, entangled with memories both sweet and painful. As the confrontation escalated, their voices joined in a mournful chorus, filling the quiet spaces with battles waged over empty titles. "Have you forgotten her?" she shouted, her chest tightening with both anger and despair, emotions colliding like thunderclouds. Just when she thought reconciliation was a faraway dream, hope flickered bleakly amongst the conflict. A dusty letter resurfaced, hinting at lost treasures. But would it offer true wealth? Holding the locket tight against her heart, Sarah felt her resolve shatter under the weight of uncertainty. Could she ignite the spark of reconciliation in this quagmire of avarice, or was their bond severed forever? As shadows of doubt swirled around her, the echoes of laughter and warmth faded, leaving her yearning for clarity amidst the shadows of greed. The battle for family honor was just beginning, and dread pooled deeply within her as the questions loomed large. What kind of inheritance would remain once the dust settled? Sarah inhaled deeply, her lungs burning with the echoes of her brother's harsh words. The locket felt impossibly heavy in her palm, yet it was not the physical weight she feared. It was the burden of expectations and memories tethered to it. "I won't let our mother's legacy drown in this chaos," she vowed silently, determination igniting within her. The confrontation had been ugly, but now was the time to regroup, to strategize. Stepping away from her brothers, she returned to the sanctuary of her classroom, the familiar surroundings wrapping around her like an embrace. The students had vacated. The room was empty, except for the remnants of their laughter lingering in the air. She moved mechanically to her desk, the day's lesson plan forgotten in the turmoil of her mind. Pulling open a drawer, she found papers spiraled with notes about creativity and collaboration, her strategies to inspire her students. If only I could apply this to my own life, she mused, recognizing the disconnect. Teaching was never just about conveying information. It was about nurturing potential and confronting challenges. Why can't I do the same with my own family? As she stared at the blank pages in front of her, her fingers traced the locket's design, each ridge and curve reminding her of the stories her grandmother once shared about resilient women in their family. She considered who she wanted to be in this moment. Did she still want to fight for connection? Or had the darkness seeped too deeply into her brothers' hearts? In that moment of reflection, an idea crystallized. Instead of confronting them with anger or despair, what if she approached them with collaboration? She could construct a family meeting, a rare space where they could express their grievances, but also hear each other. It's not about the locket or the house, she thought, her resolve sharpening. It's about remembering who we are as a family. With renewed purpose, Sarah retrieved her phone and began scrolling through her contacts until she reached Mark and Jake. She hesitated for a moment, the screen flickering with uncertainty. Would they dismiss her? But rather than let fear govern her actions, she took a breath and sent a group message. Can we meet to talk? I think we're losing sight of what's important. Let's find a way to reconnect. After hitting send, a wave of anxiety washed over her. The waiting felt like a descent into anticipation. Her heart raced, each tick of the clock amplifying her hopes and fears. But then her phone chimed. Mark's response was quick. Fine, when? From Jake, a simple, let's do it. Relief surged through her. They were willing to engage, to confront, even if it was just a beginning. The meeting was set for later that week. Each day leading up to it, Sarah prepared mentally, collecting her thoughts like building blocks, eager to construct a foundation of dialogue rather than discord. Yet the underlying apprehension never completely subsided. Could she facilitate the conversation? Would her brothers truly listen without anger? As she immersed herself back into lesson planning, a part of her couldn't help but think about the dusty letter mentioned during their confrontation. What treasures or burdens might it unveil? Would it hold the key to understanding, a truth that could either heal or further fragment their fragile bonds? With emotions roiling beneath her surface, Sarah knew that the upcoming meeting held the potential to change everything. Yet, uncertainty loomed heavy in the air. Could they truly find reconciliation, or would the fissures deepen into irrevocable fractures? The answers lay ahead, tangled in the mystery of familial ties that refused to be easily severed. But the road to discovery was just beginning. Would she have the strength to unveil the truth within their tangled history? Sarah stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her hair nervously. The meeting was only hours away, and she felt the weight of every unresolved issue pressing down on her. Her thoughts danced around the potential outcomes: confrontation, healing, or complete chaos. Taking a deep breath, she practiced her opening words, sharpening her focus. I want us to be a family again, she whispered to her reflection. Yet, as she envisioned the gathering, doubt crept back in. Could her brothers overcome their anger long enough to engage with her? With a determined shake of her head, Sarah stepped away from the mirror. Her students had relied on her to facilitate understanding through creativity, and she decided to borrow that approach for her family debate. Reaching for the lesson notes she had pulled from the drawer days before, she highlighted key phrases on collaboration and compassion. In the hours leading up to the meeting, Sarah threw herself into preparation. She wrote down memories of shared joy, a family camping trip, laughter echoing through the backyard, simple moments that defined their bond. She envisioned this as her tool, a way to bridge the chasm of hurt that had divided them. When the evening finally arrived, the familiar clank of her brother's shoes on the wood floor echoed in her ears as they entered the living room. Mark's brow was furrowed with tension, while Jake's hands hugged his sides tightly. "Thanks for coming," she began, her voice steadier than she felt. "I know we've been through a lot, but I believe we owe it to ourselves to talk." The silence stretched between them, thick and uncomfortable. Sarah could see both of them weighing her words, their expressions clouded with lingering resentment. "What do you want, Sarah?" Mark asked, his tone edged with impatience. It struck her that, despite the harshness, he was engaging. She steeled herself against the urge to flinch. "I want us to find a way to reconnect," she said, her voice softening. "I don't want us to let Mom's legacy dissolve into anger. I've been thinking about how we can honor her memory together." Jake's gaze flicked to Mark, as if gauging a reaction. "And how exactly do you propose we do that?" he replied, skepticism brimming beneath the surface. "By remembering why we're here," Sarah articulated, pulling out the highlighted notes she'd prepared. She shared stories from their childhood and reiterated moments that had forged their bonds. "We need to start from this common ground if we want to heal." As she spoke, Sarah kept an eye on her brother's responses. Slowly, she noticed a softening in their demeanor. Memories broke through their hardened expressions, shared laughter, family traditions, the warmth of their childhood. Each story awakened a glimpse of humanity they had nearly buried in layers of hurt and misunderstanding. Then, just as momentum began to build, Mark interjected, "But what about the house? It feels like we're just dancing around the issues." His bluntness churned the air, and Sarah's heart sank. "The house is just a symbol," she argued, feeling the urgency rise. "If we can't agree on something as simple as remembering who we've been as a family, how will we move forward?" Silence hung in the air again, this time heavy with contemplation. She saw hesitation flicker in their eyes, the spark of possibility igniting within the depths of uncertainty. Would they follow her lead to a deeper discussion about their mother's legacy? Or would old wounds keep their hearts closed off? An unexpected determination welled inside Sarah. If they could confront the truth within their memories, perhaps they could reforge the bonds that were nearly broken. But beneath that hope, she felt a shadow. The dusty letter from the confrontation lingered in the back of her mind, a reminder of hidden truths that could reshape everything. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, interrupting their gathering. The unexpected sound sent her pulse racing. Each brother exchanged glances, the previous tension within them crackling back to life. "Who's that?" Jake asked, standing up, eyes narrowed in suspicion. As Sarah moved toward the door, she wondered what revelation could come from this unexpected interruption and what it would mean for the fragile peace she was trying to build with her brothers. Sarah paused, hand hovering over the doorknob, as her heart raced. The weight of her brother's earlier words hung in the air, a reminder of the fragile state of their relationship. The doorbell rang again, tearing at her fleeting sense of composure. "Just a second," she called out, steeling herself for whatever was behind the door. Was it someone who could further complicate the storm brewing in the living room, or perhaps someone who could help? As she swung the door open, she was met not by a familiar face, but by an unexpected visitor, an elderly woman with a warm yet weary smile, her presence instantly radiating a mix of comfort and concern. "My apologies for intruding," the woman said, clutching a tattered envelope, "but I believe I have something that might concern your family." Sarah's mind raced. This woman was a stranger, yet the urgency in her tone sent alarm bells ringing. "Who are you?" Sarah asked, taking a step back to allow her in, a growing instinct hinting that this encounter could change everything. "I'm Anna, a neighbor of your mother," she said, stepping inside with careful deliberation. "I noticed something on my way to deliver this, and I felt it was crucial you should see it." Before Sarah could process this unexpected twist, Jake and Mark exchanged perplexed looks, their earlier tension simmering but momentarily overshadowed by curiosity. "What on earth could you have for us?" Mark asked, annoyance creeping through his tone, clearly skeptical of the intrusion. Anna took a deep breath. "Before your mother's condition progressed, she wrote letters to each of you. Letters meant to be delivered at a time like this." At the mention of their mother's condition, a chilling silence enveloped them. Sarah felt an icy vibration in her chest. The discussions about the house and their mother's passing felt trivial now, faced with this revelation. "Why didn't we know about these letters?" Jake's voice was laced with confusion and anger. "I was told not to mention them until I thought it was time," Anna explained, her gaze flicking past them to the stacks of memories they had shared moments earlier. "Your mother believed that they would provide closure, clarity, something for each of you to hold on to." Sarah's mind reeled, fragments of her mother's fading memory weaving into the present. She had been relentless in seeking connections, yearning to regain the family unit. Yet here was tangible proof that their connections had already been contemplated by their mother. "What do the letters say?" Sarah finally managed, her voice tinged with a mix of hope and dread. "I don't know," Anna replied, a hint of sadness in her eyes. "But she intended them to remind you of your love for one another, the love that perseveres despite the hardships. They are meant to heal." Mark's expression softened slightly, shifting from skepticism to intrigue, while Jake's agitation shifted toward contemplation. Perhaps witnessing their mother's intentions revealed a vulnerability that cracked their hardened exteriors. The envelope trembled in Anna's hands, the weight of its contents resonating with the gravity of their shared history. "Where are they?" Jake demanded, suddenly fixated, eager to understand what their mother intended amidst the shadows of her illness. With a fragile nod, the envelope was handed over cautiously, as though it carried the essence of their mother's spirit within its folds. As the brothers gathered around, an unnoticed tension grew heavy in the air. Each was grappling with what the letters might bring forth: healing, anger, revelations left in the wake of their mother's dementia. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of impending conflict. The more they discovered, the more they risked unraveling hidden truths that could shatter or transform their already tense reunion. What if their mother's letters didn't just push them closer together, but revealed rifts so deep they could threaten everything? As they stood around the envelope, anxiety coiling in her gut, Sarah felt the burden of truth clawing its way to the surface. "Let's open it," she said, feeling as if she were standing at the edge of an abyss, uncertain of what awaited them on the other side. The brothers huddled together, the atmosphere thick with a tension that seemed almost palpable. Sarah's heart pounded in her ears, each beat underscoring the gravity of the moment. She felt a profound weight in her hands as she reached for the envelope, the fragile paper evoking both trepidation and a glimmer of hope. It was just a simple letter, yet it felt like a portal to her mother's unresolved emotions, a catalyst for change, a potential bridge toward healing. Jake leaned closer, his breath warm against her shoulder, and urged, "Just open it." His impatience, mixed with lingering frustration, hinted at his desire to unearth answers, but underscored an underlying fear of confrontation, of confronting not only their mother's words, but perhaps each other. "Let me," she said quietly, steadying her nerves. She had become the reluctant leader of the trio, the one who felt an inexplicable obligation to keep the family from fracturing further in their grief, yet who had her own doubts about the path ahead. As she peeled back the envelope's sealed flap, the soft rustle of paper filled the silence, intrusive and immediate. Within the folds, she uncovered 3 neatly folded letters, each marked with a name: Jake, Mark, and then her own. The sight of her name sent a shiver down her spine. Would there be a rift that she could not mend, unveiled in ink and sentiment? With significant reluctance, she chose to separate her letter from the bunch. "Who goes first?" Mark asked, his voice higher pitched than earlier, a hint of vulnerability in his bravado. "Let me read mine first," Sarah declared, her decision punctuated by a rush of adrenaline. She needed to understand what her mother intended for her, to feel connected to her spirit amid the whirlwind of sorrow. She unfolded the letter slowly, letting her eyes scan the delicate script, each word distinct yet fragile. "Dear Sarah," it began, "in life, you have always been my strongest protector." As she read her mother's intimate thoughts, the words washed over her like a warm tide. Each line spoke of love and trust, but also of expectation, of a sadness that had reached its breaking point. The mention of her siblings stirred unease. Her mother had written about her desire for them to remain close, despite the inevitable pain of separation. Yet beneath the tenderness was a firm resolution, as her mother insisted on confronting mental illness's aftermath. It felt like an acknowledgement of the unspoken resentments that had plagued their family long before the dementia came into play. "Forgive each other," it continued, "and find the light even amidst the darkest times." Closing her eyes, Sarah wrestled with her emotions. Those words echoed within her, creating a tumultuous storm of sentiment and reflection. Could they truly take their mother's advice? The other letters loomed silently, and she felt a surge of responsibility. Could she encourage her brothers to embrace this wisdom in the face of their family's legacy? "Who is next?" she asked, her voice tinged with an authority that surprised even her. It was no longer about secrets or storms brewing within their hearts. It was about the potential for reclamation. Yet even as she spoke, a dull ache of apprehension tugged at her psyche. Would it lead them to reconciliation, or would the burden of their mother's words unravel more than it repaired? Jake took a breath, steeling himself. "I guess I should go." As the focus shifted and the atmosphere thickened with unresolved tension, Sarah braced herself for the ripple effects of what was to come. Would Jake's revelations unravel the bonds or sow seeds of envy? As he began to read, the air crackled with anxiety, signaling that deeper truths were about to emerge. Jake's voice trembled as he started to read, the crinkles of the letter folding tightly as he unraveled the fears etched in ink. Sarah instinctively held her breath, her heart ricocheting between hope and dread. The room felt smaller, the shadows of their childhood memories cluttering around them, suffocating in their quietude. "I've always felt overshadowed," Jake began, the words stinging like a sudden cold wind. "Mom often spoke about Sarah being the strong one, which meant I was—" He swallowed hard, his vulnerability laid bare like a raw nerve. "Prone to fading into the background." The words hit Sarah like a blow. She hadn't realized the depth of his feelings. Each syllable seemed to peel back the layers of familial loyalty that had long masked their individual struggles. Had Sarah unknowingly stifled his voice? "Mom loved you, Jake," Mark interjected, a hint of defensiveness creeping into his tone. "You can't let those feelings define you. We all had our struggles." Jake continued, dismissing Mark's attempt at reassurance as he pressed on. "Mom knew I was different. She understood my anxiety, but she never really knew how to fix it. As we went through her illness, I felt everyone, especially you, Sarah, rallying around her like it was a mantra to distance yourself from me." The accusation hung in the air, a thick fog that clouded the sacred ground of shared grief. Sarah shifted uncomfortably, but felt a sudden surge of clarity. She was indeed the one who had sought solace in being a caretaker, even when it meant neglecting her own emotional needs. But the weight of Jake's guilt, unaddressed, threatened to tether him to resentment. "Mom wanted us united. She wanted to see us fighting for each other, not against," Sarah said, her voice cutting through Jake's defensive barriers. It was an appeal, an attempt to break through the fractured dynamics. What if she was just projecting her wishes? What if we're being led by guilt instead of truth? Jake shot back, his eyes glimmering with vulnerability mixed with anger. Mark's voice came soft yet firm. "We're not here to blame anyone. This isn't about division. Mother wouldn't have wanted that." Sarah felt the need to steer the conversation, recognizing that navigating this minefield required tact and an acknowledgement of the deeper issues at play. "Jake, I didn't mean to overlook you," she said, her heart pounding as the truth struck her. "I thought I was helping, but maybe I was, just afraid of losing control." Jake's expression softened, a flicker of understanding igniting between them. "Perhaps that's it. Just as we lost Mom, maybe we're afraid of losing one another in this." "Bringing those feelings to light is the first step into embracing what was lost," Sarah declared, feeling buoyed by a growing determination. As the silence settled over them again, a newfound connection started to weave around their pent-up pain, a hint of healing, but frail and fragile. Yet Mark shifted, his brow furrowed, indicating the ongoing turbulence beneath the surface. "There's more in my letter," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. The tension shifted, as if holding its breath once more, signaling that the revelations were only beginning. Would the next letter truly bring the reckoning they all feared, yet desperately needed? With a lingering sense of anticipation rippling through the air, Sarah felt her heart quicken. What storm still brewed within that single piece of paper? The atmosphere weighed heavily, charged with unspoken truths, as Mark began to unfold the next layers of their shared past. Sarah could almost hear the faint whisper of the letter's secrets, a ghost of their mother's wishes hovering just beyond reach. She shifted her focus, channeling her energy into understanding not just what Jake had revealed, but the implications of further unearthing their family's emotional history. "Maybe we should read it together," Mark suggested, his voice gaining strength amidst the emotional rubble. "We're all here now, and we owe it to ourselves to face this head-on." Jake nodded slowly, his brows knitted in contemplation. "It's better than keeping everything bottled up. Maybe I'll find some comfort in knowing that I'm not alone in feeling overshadowed." Sarah felt a pulse of resolve. Jake was recognizing his truth, and it ignited a response in her own heart. This was a moment of clarity she needed to capture, not with words, but through action. "We need to create a safe space," she urged, reaching out to him. "Let's set the tone for this. No blame, just understanding." As Mark carefully unfolded the letter, Sarah felt the air thicken with anticipation and trepidation. What else lay waiting to be exposed? With each word that Mark spoke, Sarah found herself not just listening, but reflecting. Slowly, the spectrum of their mother's love and her articulated fears began to take shape. She hoped to maintain bonds, yet her nervousness struck deep within each of them. "Mom wrote about her fears for you, Jake," Mark read aloud, his voice trembling at times. "She wanted you to know that your path was different, but equally important. She believed you would carve your own identity." That revelation hung heavily, the enormity of their mother's wish, yet her inability to communicate it, pierced Sarah's heart. Jake's reaction was immediate, a mix of surprise and vulnerability washing over his features. He inhaled sharply, the weight of unspoken expectations beginning to lift just slightly. "Why didn't she tell me this herself?" he murmured, the rawness erupting inside him. "Why leave it hidden for me to figure out?" "Maybe she didn't know how," Sarah responded gently, struggling to keep her own emotions steady. "Maybe she thought she was protecting us by not wanting to create more conflict." Mark interjected. "She wanted you to feel valued just as much as Sarah is, but this wasn't a competition. We've taken her love and twisted it into something it was never meant to be." Sarah felt the familiar tug-of-war in her heart. It was no longer just about Jake or Mark. It was about the lesson they would take from this moment to reshape their lives moving forward. The realization washed over her that her instinct to protect had often been tied to her fears about abandonment. "Don't let Mom's intentions fade into something that divides us," Sarah said firmly. "What she tried to show is that our differences can make us stronger, that we don't need to restrict one another based on our feelings of inadequacy." Mark caught her eye, recognizing the quiet strength in her resolve. "Perhaps it's time we all start examining our roles here. Truly dig into what's holding us back from healing. Their gaze turned back to Jake, who seemed caught between resentment and relief. A glimmer of hope flickered in the depths of his eyes, suggesting a sense of ownership over his narrative beginning to form. As silence enveloped them, the only sound became the gentle rustling of paper. There was a pivotal moment within reach, a moment of willing change, and Sarah felt its gravitational pull like never before. What would they choose now as fresh possibilities lay ahead? Would they grab hold of this chance at reconciliation, or spiral deeper into the confusion? Her heart raced at the thought of the letters revealing difficulties yet to come. What if it speaks to more than just Mom's wishes? Jake murmured, leaning forward with intrigue. What if it dares us to confront truths we've hidden from ourselves? In that heartbeat, Sarah sensed the next wave of revelations just bubbling to the surface, and fear mingled tantalizingly with excitement at what the letter might unlock. Sarah felt the tension in the air thicken as Mark turned the page of the letter. The crackling sound echoed in the silence, almost overwhelming her. She could sense Jake's apprehension. His eyes darted between the letter and his brother, as if anticipating a confession that might change everything. "I wish I could say this in person," Mark read, his voice steadying. "I don't want any of you to feel like you've lost me just because I'm not the mother you once knew." There was a weighted pause. Sarah's heart lurched. The raw honesty stung like a fresh wound. Their mother had stumbled into a skeletal truth that none of them had acknowledged in years. Her deterioration had impacted them far beyond the obvious. As Mark continued reading, Sarah's mind raced. The tangled threads of their family dynamics began to unravel before her eyes. Jake had always been distant, but now she understood. The loneliness and burden he carried were echoed in their mother's words. She needed to address this head-on, not just for him, but also for her own peace. Sarah realized the time for passive acceptance was over. They needed to confront the legacy of pain, even if it meant unveiling past shadows. "You're more than a sibling lost in the shadows, Jake," Sarah said softly. The words felt powerful, breaking through the oppressive atmosphere. "You have your own light, and Mom believed in that. That's not up for debate. It's our responsibility to nurture it. No more hiding." Jake's brow furrowed as he processed her statement. A part of him seemed to want to reject her words, to cling to the comfort of resentment that had long been all too familiar. Yet, another part, the part that craved acceptance, began to stir. Behind his stoic demeanor, she sensed an undercurrent of vulnerability. "You don't get it. All this time I've felt like I'm just filling a space she left behind, filling someone else's shoes," he shot back, the intensity rising as he struggled to articulate his tangled emotions. Mark intervened. "She loved us all differently, Jake. It's not a competition of worth." His brother's frustration simmered visibly, but his words began to dissolve the barriers Jake had built. As the layers of familial expectations began to peel away, Sarah recognized a pivotal opportunity, a chance to reshape not just Jake's perspective, but her own as well. Identifying the fears that had governed their interactions would be crucial. "What if we see this differently?" she asked, her voice steady. "What if Mom left us this letter not to cement the divisions, but to set us free? Free to accept our roles and find our paths without carrying those burdens." Caught between resistance and dawning realizations, Jake's defenses began to crack. "I'm just not sure how to be more than someone's replacement," he mumbled, his voice dropping as the walls he erected sounded flimsy and fragile. "We take it one step at a time," Sarah replied fervently. She envisioned a new possibility. Not only could they heal individually, but they could also emerge as a united front against their shared doubts and insecurities. "Let this be our starting point. We need to explore our identities beyond labels, beyond expectations." Mark watched, absorbing the dynamic. He saw a flicker of determination in Sarah, a spark igniting the embers of hope within Jake. This was a turning point. The strength of their family depended on their willingness to confront the truth and its implications. As uncertainty began to yield to cautious optimism, Mark returned to the letter. "There's still more," he warned, flipping the paper. "Listen closely. This might be the hardest part." The three siblings leaned in, hearts pounding, bracing for whatever impact the rest of the letter would bring. Sarah sensed her own resolve hardening. The shadows may have lurked behind every word, but she was more than ready. This was their moment to redefine their relationships, and only the truth would set them free. "Let's face it together," she whispered, adrenaline coursing through her, knowing that whatever the letter had in store could either tear them apart or solidify their bond like never before. But how deep would their willingness to embrace the truth take them? The words hung in the air, a barely contained tension that felt electrifying. Mark took a deep breath and continued. Each word of the letter weighed heavier, revealing the fissures in their family dynamics and forcing them to confront feelings long buried. "I never wanted to be a burden," Mark read, pausing only to meet each sibling's gaze. "I hope you can forgive me for the times I couldn't be the mother you needed." The silence that followed was palpable, thick with shared grief and unspoken resentment. Sarah's thoughts spiraled into a cacophony of emotions, remorse, sadness, but also an ember of determination sparked by their mother's vulnerability. "Forgiveness," Sarah whispered, almost to herself. It felt like a steep cliff, painful and necessary. Yet how could they forgive the past, the perceived negligence, when it seemed so insurmountable? Mark turned another page, diving deeper into their mother's reflections on each child's journey. This is how she saw us," he said, disbelief creeping into his voice. "She felt she had lost herself, but she thought we could find our way back." Jake's expression hardened. "That's the problem, isn't it? Finding our way back to what? A past that's always shrouded in her shadows?" Frustration flared in Jake's voice, but it echoed the doubt lingering in Sarah's mind too. They were navigating uncharted waters with a compass that was broken. "Maybe we need to redefine what together," Sarah countered, passion igniting in her tone. "This is our chance to become who we want to be, not who we were expected to be. It starts now, with this letter." Jake fell silent, visibly struggling to digest her words. Mark, caught in the crossfire of their escalating conversation, nodded in agreement. "We can't change what's happened, but we can influence where we go from here." The gravity of the moment filled the room as they all contemplated the implications. Jake leaned against the wall, arms crossed tightly over his chest, a protective barrier guarding his vulnerability. "I don't want to be part of some family healing narrative, Sarah. It's all too neat, too tidy. Life isn't like that," he shot back, a defensive edge sharpening his words. "I don't want neatness or tidy conclusions either," Sarah snapped, surprised at her own intensity. "What I want is clarity. We have to face the messy truth, even if it means hurting." Each syllable felt like a challenge hurled at Jake, and she held his gaze defiantly. There was a shift. Jake looked unsettled, and for the first time, uncertainty crept into his features. Could this really be the start of something new, an opportunity to embrace the chaos rather than escape it? Mark interjected, his voice ringed with a blend of authority and concern. "This is about breaking the cycle, not restarting it. Our mother recognized her own struggles and had the courage to expose them. We need to embrace our truths, or we prolong the very pain she wished to alleviate." Caught off guard by his brother's impassioned plea, Sarah saw Jake's defenses waver slightly. "Embracing our truths," he echoed, almost like he was tasting the words. "We can take control," Sarah urged gently, her heart pounding in her chest. "We can reshape our family narrative, but we can only do it together." As Jake's gaze softened, flickers of hope teased at Sarah's heartstrings. She had chosen her words carefully, hoping they'd resonate in his mind. This was not merely about confronting their mother's legacy, but also about dismantling the suffocating expectations they had inherited. The air shifted as uncertainty began to yield to possibility. "So how do we start?" Jake finally asked, his voice steadier now, though still tinged with doubt. Sarah took a step toward him, her heart racing. "We communicate, really communicate. No more hiding or pretending, even if it feels uncomfortable. We're opening old wounds, but it's necessary, for all of us." With a tentative nod, Jake seemed to grasp the enormity of this undertaking, an irretrievable plunge into their histories. As they stood there together, Sarah realized the path ahead was fraught with potential breakthroughs and painful revelations, but it was one she felt ready to walk. "Let's get through the rest of the letter first," Mark suggested, breaking the poignant moment. "There are details here that can't be ignored." The three siblings braced themselves, leaning into their individual truths. This was no longer merely a letter. It was a roadmap to understanding within their fractured family. But as Sarah held her breath, a new uncertainty teased the edges of her mind. What other revelations lay ahead, and how would they reshuffle the very foundations of their identities? As the final line of their mother's letter echoed in the charged silence, Sarah felt an unexpected mix of dread and anticipation. Mark had read aloud their mother's insights about finding strength within their vulnerabilities, but it was the next part that truly set the stage for transformation. "I want each of you to understand that love is not only about the bonds formed by blood. It is also about the ties forged by understanding, compassion, and forgiveness. I hope you find your way to truth, not for me, but for yourselves." Sarah's heart raced as she absorbed the weight of those words. It was a rallying call to confront not just their mother's legacy, but the unfinished stories of their own lives. She searched Jake's eyes for a glimmer of recognition, an echo of her own turbulent journey, and found it there, a defiant spark that hinted at potential reconciliation. "What does this mean for us?" Mark asked, his voice softening as the weight of their mother's message settled over them like a warm embrace. He shifted his gaze from Jake to Sarah, seeking a linchpin to anchor their newfound determination. "It means we take what she said seriously," Sarah began, grabbing the moment with both hands. "We learn from our past, but refuse to let it chain us." The conviction in her voice grew stronger as she continued. "We don't reconcile because she tells us to, but because we want to move forward. We can redefine ourselves, not as extensions of our mother's legacy, but as individuals empowered to pursue our own paths." Jake shifted uncomfortably, still buoyed up by his brother's earlier revelations. "You really think we can just, forgive each other and magically feel okay?" he asked, skepticism still weaving through his tone. "No, it won't be that neat," Sarah replied candidly. "But confronting the truth and acknowledging our fears is the first step. We can create space to talk openly, to lay out what has hurt us, and truly listen. It's about stemming the pain that has rippled through our family. We have to start there." Mark nodded, slowly digesting her words. "And we have to be brave," he added. "We've hidden behind masks for too long. It's time to show each other our true selves." There was a palpable shift in the room. With each moment, the air thick with unspoken words began to dissipate. The layers of confusion and hurt were peeling away, exposing raw, unguarded emotions. They all felt raw, like stepping into one another's clandestine worlds for the very first time. Jake exhaled deeply, his face softening. "You're right," he conceded, a hint of vulnerability breaking through the walls he had erected around himself. "I've been so focused on feeling rejected that I lost sight of what family truly means. Maybe I thought sharing my pain would only reignite conflict." "That's exactly the hesitance we need to overcome," Sarah said, her heart swelling with pride that he was willing to accept his flaws. "We cannot grow if we remain detached from each other. You have as much right to express your truth as I do." Mark smiled, sensing the ideological shift pressing them forward. "And if we don't, We risk repeating our mother's mistakes of shutting down when the going gets tough. We owe it to her and ourselves to encourage each other to be open. Suddenly, an overwhelming sense of clarity washed over Sarah. The confrontation wasn't just an event, it was a transformative journey. The realizations began to forge smoother connections among the three of them, dismantling long-held assumptions in favor of a shared understanding. "Let's create our own family rituals and bonds," Sarah suggested, excitement fueling her next words. "Maybe we can start with something small like weekly check-ins. We can share our victories and struggles, break bread together, and nurture our strengths as a family. Each week is a chance to strengthen our connection." "I like that," Mark agreed, enthusiasm apparent in his voice. The idea of building a genuine foundation appealed to him. "And we can honor Mom's spirit every step of the way," Jake added thoughtfully, pride radiating. "No more avoidance, just honest dialogue." As they exchanged eye contact, an unspoken commitment enveloped them. They acknowledged the mountains still standing between them, unyielding yet climbable. In that moment of clarity, they grasped a core truth. Healing was not about erasing their mother's influence, but rather embracing it as a catalyst for their own personal growth. With their mother's voice echoed in their hearts, a guide rather than an anchor, the siblings felt ready to redefine their identities. No longer constrained by shadows of resentment, they were on the cusp of creating futures buoyed by mutual understanding and support. In the whirlwind of reflection that followed, Sarah took a deep breath and smiled. She had finally found her footing, not just as a caretaker, but as an equal partner in this journey of healing. This was her personal achievement, not simply mending the broken family ties, but evolving into a leader who celebrated growth in vulnerability and strength. With newfound conviction shimmering in her heart, Sarah seized the moment and declared, "Let's begin this new chapter, together." And with that, boundaries disintegrated, paving the way for a future where they could emerge transformed, empowered, and free. If you found inspiration in Sarah's journey of healing and transformation, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support so you don't miss out on more exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Every click counts. We want to hear your thoughts. Comment down your reactions and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this powerful conclusion. Let's spread the message of personal overcoming together.